So welcome, everybody. It's so good to see everybody here. Larry did a great job at explaining what we're going to be doing, but for the recording, I'm going to talk about the premise of the book, the inspirations, the spiritual themes, because I do consider this an act, and a piece of spiritual fiction. Out in the regular world, it's historical fiction, but internally, and especially talking about it here at a retreat center, I can definitely really shine that idea of it being a piece of spiritual fiction. I'm going to just talk a little bit about those kinds of things, give you a couple of little tastes, a little bit of readings, kind of check in with you. Sometimes there's questions that came up, and in some of the other author events that I've done, people are very curious about the history. So I can go on and on about the history of the Irish and the English history. So any questions, please ask. I'm excited to answer those in particular, but any questions at all. And then we'll move into more of the workshop part of this, which is, and it's always an invitation to everybody. You can just have a nice, quiet little meditation when we do that, but it'll be a guided meditation to meet an ancestor. So for most of you probably know this, but we're at the time of the year where the veil is very thin, and being able to access ancestors is a lot easier this time of year. We just passed the celebration of Samhain, which is November 1st, and we really are in the month of Samhain.
You want sure? No, it's all right. I'll stand.
Oh, well, those are parents. Oh, hello, parents. Awesome. Okay. And then after that, I'll check in. Sometimes people really have something interesting they wanna say out loud. So we'll check in with that, and then after that, we'll move into book signings. All right. So what the heck is this book all about? The Common Hours. It's about Lindsay McDonald. She's a 26-year-old from Newburyport, which I know people in this area probably really like that. And she, after her mother's sudden death, she discovered that her mother was secretly time traveling. And after digging a little bit, she finds out that she was traveling to 16th century England, particularly to the court of Queen Elizabeth Tudor. So Lindsay now has this legacy on her shoulders, and she's also full of grief. So she's hoping, even though it's really not okay, she's hoping that she can find her mother back in time. So she goes back to this time, but instead of finding her mother, she lands in the arms of her 16th century noble Irish ancestors, who are fighting with none other than Elizabeth herself for independence for Ireland. So thinking that she can basically kind of broker a peace, she offers herself as an envoy to Elizabeth's court. There was this rare moment in history where Ireland and England were actually kind of okay. Very rare, this very rare window. And I should say the year is 1560 when she lands. And so she is with her ancestors who welcome her with open arms. Because they're Celtic, they believe in the magic, they're good with this, they're very happy to have her there, and they recognize this as an absolute divine gift to have this person from the future, a descendant. And so what happens, though, when she does go to Elizabeth's court is she has a bit of an attraction for one of the Queen's most trusted advisors that goes into a full-blown falling in love. So her loyalty's split. And for those of you that may or may not know, the history of Elizabethan England is quite treacherous. So just to sum this up, or to just let you know, Lindsay is a Buddhist. She's a feminist. She's a vegetarian. And she's 26 years old from America. And she's trying to navigate being at this incredibly dangerous court. So, and she learns how dangerous it can be. So that's generally what it is. Now, initially this story was very different. I'm very, very fascinated with Elizabeth and the Tudors. Anybody else here a Tudor fan? Anybody online? I know Jen is. Yeah, I know Jen is. So anyway, with that fascination, it kind of grew and grew, and it used to be my, I used to call it Tudor porn, because I'd only enjoy it like during breaks, during grad school, like being able to watch any kind of Tudor movies or read any kind of Tudor books. But in doing so, I would ask myself, like, what's the fascination with this woman from 500 years ago? Not kind of knowing that there was a lot of people fascinated. This was before the movies came out in the 90s. This is a little earlier than that. And part of it was amazing to see a woman who was in charge of it all, in charge of the entirety of England, and she was also Queen of Ireland, and to do it at the age of 25, and to do it as well as she did, and also to bring in everything she did. I mean, without her, we don't get Shakespeare. So there's a lot that goes on around that. But as I was digging deeper, I also was pretty amazed at all the trauma she experienced. I mean, her mother was beheaded, her mother's Anne Boleyn, at the behest of her father. She was in and out of the line of succession. She went through 4 stepmothers. At one point, when her sister was on the throne, she was suspected of plotting to overthrow her sister, which she had nothing to do with, but she was imprisoned at the Tower of London and came pretty close to being executed. But because she could keep her wits about her, because she was very, very intelligent and very emotionally intelligent, she was able to, literally keep her head. So I get amazed at that, like what somebody's gone through, and then being able to hold the power that she does. So the first drafts were basically me psychoanalyzing her. And even Mark, my partner, said to me, "You just want her to be one of your clients." It's like, yeah, I kind of do. That would really be awesome. I would love it. I would love it. But a few years into writing the book, I started this in 2009 and didn't really finish the first draft until 2012. And after around, 2016 or so, for some reason, I really felt the need to explore my ancestry on that side of the family, the Scotch-Irish part. And I had to get back to the 15th century. I wanted to know who of my ancestors were alive when Elizabeth was alive, not knowing what I was going to find out. So I discovered a grandfather. He's many, many generations back, but he is a great-grandfather, Sorley Boy MacDonald. And he was chieftain of all the lands in the most northern part of Ireland. And he was also the son of basically the Lord of the Isles in Scotland. So they're Scotch-Irish. So they're like badass in terms of what they're in charge of and what they do. And all their connections in terms of it weaving in and out of royalty and nobility. So I Googled him. I Googled Sorley Boy MacDonald, and I almost fell off the chair when I saw there wasn't a picture of him, it was a picture of Elizabeth, because they have so much history for decades. He lived to 85, which is amazing. He was born in 1505 and died in 1590, and he was a soldier and a military genius, they say. But he was in many, many, many battles. So the fact that he lived that long anyway, never mind, given how many battles he was in, it was kind of amazing. So here's this other amazing person that I discovered. And when I did that, I decided to give Lindsay, my heroine, give her my ancestry. So these are the noble ancestors that she came into being in their arms. And it made sense because they really did they wanted Ireland to survive as Ireland. It was so important to them. And I think we as Americans can really relate to not wanting to be under English rule. Or maybe we can't relate, but I think we can understand. We certainly know our history well enough. So in researching the book, it's been quite a journey. I've been able to go on several trips going over to those areas. I wanted to walk in the lands that my ancestors walked, but also where Elizabeth walked. So I've been to Hampton Court, been to the Tower of London, which I thought was going to be very, very scary. It was really lovely. It was really amazing. I actually went to the spa where Anne Boleyn was beheaded and felt the energy, and I was really surprised at how healed it felt. I was expecting, I was expecting it to be pretty heavy, and it wasn't. Now, I didn't go into the Bloody Tower where they did a lot of the torture. I couldn't handle it, but you did. You said it was okay.
Well, I don't have a connection with it.
Right. But that made me feel better too. But I still wasn't going in there. So, but it is an amazing place if you ever get to go. So I also went into Northern Ireland. It's what's now is Northern Ireland, and our family apparently had many, many castles. Some by conquest, some that they just had. And it's pretty amazing to be walking around those castles. Some are pretty intact, some not so much. A lot of them have been in Game of Thrones because that's where they film it, which is kind of amazing. A lot of my guides have been extras in the Game of Thrones, which was also kind of fun. But they also know the history really well, and they basically said, this is the Game of Thrones. This history that I'm telling you about that was going on, and I get it, it totally was. It was, you know, clan members against clan members, family members against family members. And then you've got the Scotch and the Irish and the crowns that they had to worry about. So all pretty interesting. I also got to interview some professors of history. And I had this very special thing that happened. One of Sorley Boy's legacies was, after going back and forth, he did realize, he tried diplomacy several times with Elizabeth, but you know, she was getting older and he was much older. He was in his 70s, realizing he really needed to leave something for descendants. It's very, very important, I think, to us now, but extremely important to the Celtic folks, especially back then. He wanted, part of it was England had to recognize your lands and your title. So you had to submit. You had to basically submit your fealty to Elizabeth. So what he did is he went down to Dublin Castle. He literally prostrated himself at 70-something years of age to her portrait and said, yes, yes, you are my queen. And with that, the earldom of Antrim, and it's County Antrim now, was created. So he passed that to his son, and it exists today. And the family lives in a castle still today. So I got to talk to the youngest son of the current Earl of Antrim. His name is Hector MacDonald, and he's also a historian. And I've even seen him on documentaries and interviewed. And yeah, it was wonderful. We had dinner with him. I actually spent my 50th birthday with him, Mark and I. And, you know, I didn't know how he was going to feel, because I think you could really dislike the Tudors if you are a MacDonald, even to this day. But we got on the subject of Elizabeth, and we were like, we were just like, he's like, I think she's a fantastic person. And I'm like, yes. So we had a really good time. We had a really good time. So with that, I want to give you a little sense of this. And before I do that, I just want to tell you one thing. Meeting Sorley Boy for me, I realized he's been there my whole life. He has been a presence my whole life. I have felt him there my whole life. He has shown up in different ways. And cognitively, intellectually, factually, I knew nothing about him until 2016. But I felt him. And then I knew what it was. I knew who this was, this feeling. You guys are nodding your heads, so I guess you can relate to this. Yeah. So that's been really amazing. So that's why I definitely wanted to do some ancestral work with you guys afterwards. The other thing I can tell you is he wanted this story told. I have been told that several times from people who channeled him, and just my own feelings. So, you know, one thing about the clans is they always had a bard or two who told the stories of them. And I got chosen as the American bard. So I'm not the only one, but I'm definitely the one in America. So feels kind of good. All right. So let me just preface this. This is Lindsay. She has, again, it's 1560. She's basically in the first day of arriving into this Irish land. And actually, Sorley Boy has just met her. He's just greeted her, and they are going back to Dunanini Castle, which is where he lives. A real castle, by the way. Sorley walked with me to a looming stone structure on its own promontory, perched above the sea. Crossing the drawbridge, our footfalls echoed down toward the water flowing below. A young man working the gears within the gatehouse bowed his head as we passed into the courtyard, specked with men feeding horses and a trio of women singing as they transported baskets of dirt-ridden carrots stacked above the rim. Rushing toward us was who I hoped was Mary O'Neill. The evergreen hue of her dress set off the mass of auburn hair pulled up into a bun. Her wide eyes related dumbstruck welcome, and as she came closer, her mouth formed a perpetual O shape as she alternated taking me in and looking to her husband. Sorley was all grins, which seemed to prompt Mary to embrace me, praising the divine in Gaelic. Her shoulders were strong and her frame graceful, yet sturdy. She kept an arm around me, walking us toward the castle keep. I tried to fathom being with this Mary O'Neill and Sorley Boy MacDonald. Hi. My great-grandparents through 15 generations, as we stepped inside and down a torch-lit passageway. Mary maintained her arm around me, clasping my opposite hand in hers. Between her long, layered skirts and Sorley's bare legs, I was confused about what century I'd landed in. It seemed a mishmash, or maybe it was just that Hollywood had yet to touch this time in Irish history. We soon entered a long room with a few high windows. The purr of the turf and wood fire offered a soothing warmth. Substantial russet and clay-colored rocks framed with smaller stones comprised the walls that climbed up to the wood beam ceiling. Stretching above the hearth hung something familiar from my mother's notes, the McDonald crest. Carved and painted in 4 panels was a roaring lion, a jumping fish, a formidable ship, and an arm with muscles tense holding a cross. Empowerment, nourishment, expansiveness, and faith was what it meant to me. But what it really stood for was sovereignty over land and sea as God's will. Mary pulled out a chair for me. I paused, confronted by the large band of leather slung across its frame. Both she and Sorley took seats across the plank table of heavy wood. Connais-moi toi? She said, and to my joy, I thought I understood her, asking me how I was. Tarm gomia, I said, telling them I was well. Mary's eyes crinkled as she threw a glance over to her husband. She poured me a milky drink I describe as watered-down sour cream gone a bit funky. As soon as it hit my tongue, I swallowed it down, if only to get it to vacate my mouth. She gazed at me with kind but amused eyes. Speaking in Gaelic that I did not understand at all, she pointed to my cup and left the room. Sorley pushed the wooden cup farther away as if to protect me from the offending beverage, but then pulled the handle toward himself and took a sizable gulp. He placed it down on the table with a thud, landing wood on wood. Reading me, he leaned forward onto the table and extended his large hand. I recognized the invitation and placed my palm on his. He completed the connection, resting his other hand on top. His touch was gentle. He spoke to me, and I recognized him again calling me Anam Cara, which means soul friend. I repeated the phrase back to him, letting him know that I understood. It was then that I managed to ask him if he spoke English. He frowned and spoke in an accent as thick as bog mud. Aye, and I'd rather not. It took me a moment to decipher the syllables. He sat back as he withdrew his hands, while eyeing me with concern. He asked me in English, "From where do ye belong?" I hadn't realized he was actually asking my name. Instead, I heard the words through my 21st century filter. He laughed when I shrugged, but then demonstrated that he was asking by uttering his own name in his preferred language. Somerley, Bui, McDomnau. Once leaving his mouth, his name resounded about the castle walls, despite him speaking in an even-pitched volume. I tried to say his name in the same way, but from my mouth it sounded inadequate. I tried my own name, Lindsay McDonald. McDomnau. He nodded with pursed lips. Leaning forward, he looked me right in the eye. While concentrating all my ability to comprehend him, his message was clear. It does me sadness that you, my kin, speak like that of the Tudor English. This does not bode well for our cause. But I'm not from this Ireland. I'm from the New World, westward across the sea. And is that where England aimed her eyes in its conquest? I needed him to repeat the question. She did, but we have been independent from England for centuries. A gleam sparked in his eyes. He raised his mug and exclaimed, "Praise independence! And how many years?" I spoke slowly. Since 1776, and I'm from 2018. Joy flooded his face as he jumped to his feet. Slapping one hand on his thigh, he offered me the other to dance as he sung a Celtic tune. I tried to follow his stomping and hopping until he twirled me about the room. I had never thought to dance in gratitude for our American freedom. You know I wrote this a long time ago. Okay, now we all get it, right? Your new world, it be a blessed land, he said, stopping. Yes, I said, widening my arms to describe how blessed. It is said that St. Brendan sailed west from Ireland to find paradise, the Garden of Eden. Could this be the same land? Maybe, perhaps. Sorley frowned, but soon recovered his enthusiasm. What other news do ye bring to my home? The question flooded the inside of my brain. It went to gather all kinds of things to tell him, and then I realized some of what was coming up for me was really bad. And there was the really good, but my ability to discern the two faltered. Maybe having cell phones wasn't such a tremendous thing, and the bigger overarching thought arising like a leviathan out of a deep cold ocean was maybe I should inform him of none of it. I pulled my bag over to my side. As I unzipped the front pouch, the sound made Sorley sit up, fascination playing across his face. I yanked the toggle back and forth a few times and told him what it's called. He repeated the word zipper, which only made me chuckle. From the front compartment, I drew out a Hershey Kiss and placed the tiny silver package in front of him. That's for you to eat. Eat, he asked, picking up the Kiss by the white and blue printed banner that sprouted at the pinnacle. You unwrap it, I said, leaning over to show him. He examined it closer as I revealed the deep brown chocolate under the silver. At first, he took the foil in his fingertips and studied it, marveling at its pliability. Then he looked at the white banner, running his finger across the wording. More English? It says kisses. This is a chocolate kiss, I said as I motioned for him to place it on his tongue, causing his forehead to wrinkle up and his lips to disappear under his mustache. So what is this chocolate? One of the most blessed substances I have ever known, I said. He sniffed the bottom of the kiss and placed it against his lips. Once it was on his tongue, his head jerked as if the morsel came alive in his mouth. It will melt like butter, or you can bite down. Sorley swirled it around from cheek to cheek, and within seconds, his eyes were wide and shiny. Is this God's nectar? I laughed down in my belly at his discovery. That's exactly what it is. Is it the angels or fairies who deliver you such a substance? He said, teasing. It is a gift from the New World. Shall we share this with my Mary? I plunged my hand into the pouch of my bag, but it was my last one. I felt bad as I shook my head. Mary came through the doorway, mugs in hand. Sorley went to her and planted quite a kiss on Mary's lips, surprising both of us. Taste that? It's a kiss of chocolate, Sorley said in English. Mary drew back, astonished at what she'd heard and tasted. She licked her lips. Pray God, have ye become bewitched? Chocolate is one of the best things I can share from my time, I said. Mary reddened. I thought you put a love spell on him for me. I've kissed you like that before, he said, but not with such sweetness on your lips, husband. Sorley slapped one hand against the other and did a little dance around his wife, giving her another kiss on the cheek. Chocolate puts me in a good mood. I wondered if this was like crack to the uninitiated. You honor us well with such a gift, Mary said. I wanted to ask them if I was the only one to ever bring them something of a future time. They made me feel like I was the most glorious and bliss-bringing being that had ever incarnated in their presence. I decided to spring my inquiry in the morning, ready to lose my specialness to hear them, hopefully, tell me about meeting my mother. So I love them. I love them so much. So obviously the first spiritual theme about this is the ancestral connection, and how amazing it is to be able to connect with ancestors. So like I said, we'll get into that a little bit later. Now, few of you have arrived, so just so you know, we're going to do something like that later, little audience participation. So the second theme that I wanted to really highlight was spiritual integration. So in my work as a psychologist and as a coach, what I see a lot of people doing is they separate them. They never think about their spirituality being woven into work. It feels like they belong, spirituality is on when I'm on retreat, on Sundays, and occasionally at night or early morning, but not when I'm at work. And what I'm also seeing, there's a great, and I'm sure you guys are too, a great spiritual hunger, and people really wanting to integrate spirituality. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a heroine that doesn't just rely on the material resources that she might have, or even the psychological resources. I wanted her to rely a little bit more on her spiritual resources. So I wanted to bring that in. Now, granted, she does it very imperfectly, but she does do it. And she is faced with some pretty intense stuff. So for her, the questions are, what happens when you lose everything? Everything, even your century. What happens when you land in a place you never could even imagine? And how do you make meaning from it all? So just going to do another short reading, just to give you a sense of this. So just to give you the background, we get some Elizabeth here. So she's in basically, it's her first formal meal at Elizabeth's court. So she's just newly arrived. Now, something to know about, some of you probably know this in the history of America, the Irish used to be considered another race. No Irish need apply. Yep, a lot of you are nodding your heads. You get that. So hopefully online, that's something you're familiar with. Well, I think a lot of that started way back, way back. The Irish were definitely considered heathen. They were considered a little bit of savages. They were not definitely lower than the English, for sure. So here she is. She's the Irish one that's come to court, and of course she's a little different to boot. She has an American accent after all. So I'm just setting the tone. So this is their dinner, their first formal dinner she's having. As evening set, the Queen rose from her elevated seat and led her ladies into a deeper chamber where the silver and glass had been set. I received my instructions and took my lowly place furthest away from her. I didn't mind once a servant placed a small loaf of bread in front of each of our plates, along with gooseberry jam and butter. I'd enjoyed the butter that morning. It sat well with me, and having the loaf meant I would not starve. Remember, she's a vegetarian. The relief allowed me to lean back in my chair and notice the lightness of mood and chitter-chatter that flitted around the room. Elizabeth signaled that she was about to speak, just as the servants stationed behind us were poised to deliver the first course. All heads bowed, but my eyes remained on the Queen. O Lord, bless these gifts that they may do us good while we live to praise thy name divine. The Queen commenced with taking the first sip of wine. I must have been too slow to drop my gaze right upon her, as the other ladies had done. She lifted her chin and looked directly down at me, down the entire length of the table. It was impossible to look away. Mistress MacDonald, do Irish necks not bend during grace? She said. Your Majesty, please forgive me. I'm still wet behind the ears. It was as if the room was flash frozen. The Queen pinched her eyebrows together and with exaggeration wrinkled her face, mocking my slip of tongue. Her jester joined in by wetting his hands in a goblet of mead, then wiping it on the sides of his head as he walked around stumbling. The slaps of howling laughter made my face flush, yet I kept my chin up, still smiling. Elizabeth spoke above the roaring. Consider yourself advised that a lady of the court knows not to stare too long at her queen. Your Majesty, I was staring at the sun. So beautiful, yet so powerful, I said. Mistress MacDonald, you address me as if you were a royal suitor. Another spray of heat rose up in my face. I thought complimenting the Queen was how to disarm her. Elizabeth cackled, and a few of the ladies took their cue, and merriment began to surge in another wave. The Queen raised the corners of her mouth, not so much to offer a grin, but to show me her snarl. I sat upright in my chair, gazing down on my plate, hoping the moment would pass. With a quiet voice, Blanche Perry, who sat next to me, offered a few scraps of conversation while delivering a platter requested by another of the ladies. For the next course, scorched pink flesh was transported to my plate, still on the bone of a creature that had likely been roaming the woods just past the palace gates. Maybe it took its last breath as recently as this morning. I moved the utensils over the segment of the animal, making it look as if I was fully participating. Blanche asked me if the wild boar of Ireland tasted as tender. I knew well enough to answer no. I gave silent thanks when the queen pushed her plate forward to end the course. After the third dish arrived, my stomach only grew in queasiness. I took a bite of bread and chewed slowly. Anytime I could be seen chewing an actual morsel of food helped me feel like I was pulling off the masquerade. Again, I cut into the new animal on my plate and moved around the pieces, hiding some under the larger slabs of meat. This kingdom for a salad, I thought. Without a word to me, Blanche rose from her seat and spoke something into the queen's ear. Just then, the fourth plate arrived, and the queen fixed her eyes on me. I gulped my wine and hoped I had not again inspired her ire. Mistress MacDonald, pray tell, why have you scarcely taken one bite of this God-given bounty? I froze. The queen released her own utensils to the table with a clang and pushed her plate away with disgust. She then curled her finger, beckoning me to stand before her. With unsteady feet, I made my way to face her. Your Majesty, like Jesus, I do not partake in any food of the flesh. In his example, I am nourished by the bread and fish. You dare liken your being to that of Jesus, Son of God? Yet you do not strike me as a woman of great piety. You are of mine past enemy and fresh to my court. How do I know if your aim is to make an end to me? A gasp and a cry went up from the group simultaneously. I threw myself down on my knees, my heart pounding for its life. I did not wish to offend or cause injury to you, Your Majesty. Then take from my plate and show me you harbor no sense to cause me harm. I stood up obediently. Kat showed me her knife and set it down next to the queen's plate of venison. I steeled myself to not flinch as I took the meat to my mouth. It slipped past my lips and onto my tongue. As my teeth sunk into the tender flesh, I scanned the faces of the lady in my purview to get their read on the queen. I swallowed, and she motioned for yet another bite. I complied. Heart still beating fast and stomach forgotten. She stared down at me, maintaining an angry silence. Finally, she spoke. Still standing, but not much in the image of Christ. No, Your Majesty, not at all. Your reassurance of my fealty comes first. The queen tilted her head. And so much for your immortal soul, she said, laughing. The rest of the ladies tittered, the strain on their faces apparent. Here in the Elizabethan reign, only the queen could make a joke about one of her subjects' souls, and then only in docile and loyal company. Now, as I stood, I was not sure what lay in store for me, my body or soul. Okay. So with that, so let me pause before we move into the coming back to the ancestor part, and let me just check and see if anybody has any questions, anything they're wondering about, anything you want to share. Maybe your own meeting Elizabeth I at some point in your life. And online, I think I'll go to you guys first. See if you have anything. You just need to unmute yourself. Any questions?
I was curious, who are the tutors?
Who are the tutors?
Yeah.
Oh, man. They are, let's see. I'm trying not to be a history nerd. Yeah, 1485 to 1603 was their reign. They're probably the most celebrated, the most notorious in some ways. So King Henry VIII is a tutor. They basically, Henry VII won the crown, literally picked it off the battlefield right after the War of the Roses, which Game of Thrones is based on, by the way. Henry VIII then became king. He had the 6 wives. Is this ringing a bell? Yeah. 2 of them he beheaded. Yeah, not great. And Elizabeth was the last in line, least likely to be the monarch, but she was, and she ruled for 44 years, and she's still considered one of the best monarchs England ever had. She brought in the golden age. She was basically at 25, she inherited, it was, depleted. It was very vulnerable. They had to worry about the Spanish Inquisition. This is why Elizabeth was so interested in having control of Ireland. was because Ireland, Spain could come in, France could come in and attack England. They were so vulnerable, especially again in the early part of her reign. The part of the reign you don't see very much. You usually see the more celebrated Shakespearean part of her reign, where Shakespeare was happening. And she was the great patroness of Shakespeare. So I hope some of that rings a bell. Yeah, okay, yeah. Great question, thank you, I love that question. Yes, Jim.
Yeah, Debbie, I'm blessed to write as well. But what I enjoyed more than anything was the description. And I could actually picture myself in that time.
Oh, good.
And it's beautiful the way how you did it when you're writing. It is so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. Yeah. Oh, Jen, yeah.
Yeah, it seems as though, just from that one segment, the two segments you read, it seems like there was a lot of research that had to go into this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess that you've probably been doing that research in bits and pieces for a long period, a long time. Just hence your interest in the whole topic.
Yeah.
But how did you focus yourself to learn all the small details of the court and the people and the dress and all the things that I'm sure are very detailed?
Well, a lot of it I loved. I absolutely loved it. I have to give a shout out to Jen Marr, Dr. Jen Marr. Jen, you want to just wave? There she is. She's so cute. Jen is a super duper tutor head. We went to graduate school together. I mean, she's another psychologist, and she would give me books, and we would talk a lot, and we would go nuts. But she really kind of helped me really get in a little bit more because she had read a lot of the books before I did on the tutors, the nonfiction books, I should say, as well as the fiction books. But we would share a lot. So some of it started then. So some of it was way before I even thought I was gonna even write.
That's what I was getting at. I had a feeling it probably went just back in time into your interests. And of course you went to the places as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Being in the places really brings it alive for you. Yeah. I mean, you're literally looking out onto the ocean where that battle happened, which is kind of amazing. Yeah. Thank you. I'll throw it back out to online. If anybody has any questions online, anybody have anything they want to ask? You can just unmute yourself, by the way, if you did. And I'll keep it open to the growing crowd here. I welcome you guys. There's a bunch of you came in. Thank you. It's nice to see you. Appreciate it. Yeah. Any other? All right. So why don't we move into the workshop part of this? What also has been coming up for me, and it's amazing, when you start a journey like this, what else emerges, and it's like, again, you get kind of brought into something. So this idea of doing a lot of ancestral work has become very, very strong for me. I have my own spirituality is very diverse, very interspiritual, I would say. But Buddhism, shamanic work, particularly Celtic shamanism, is really big for me. And the work of the mystics, particularly the Christian mystics, are really big for me. And but I have to say, a lot of the Celtic spirituality, so not necessarily the shamanism, but the Celtic spirituality kind of seems to integrate a lot of that. And very, very big on ancestors. So before we get started, I wanted to just sort of define ancestors for folks, because the definition is a little bit, it keeps expanding for me as somebody who does this work. So I just wanted to share it with you guys. So there's, of course, our DNA and our blood ancestors. And when we do this journey that we're going to go on this guided meditation, that's basically who you're going to connect with. But maybe not. Maybe there's going to be another kind of ancestor that appears for you. So we all have geographical ancestors. So we have the people that have walked this land that we walk on for eons or centuries. We have people the towns that we live in. There's people that lived there before us that shaped the town, that created this town, that made the town what it is. And we're the stewards of it now. So we're creating that now for our descendants, our geographical descendants. Things we do will then impact them. And sometimes even we have geographical ancestors around. Some of you have old homes. Think about anybody who might have lived there before you did, especially if it's, you can relate. Yeah, and I know I just came from a weekend retreat where that was super haunted. I mean, there was so much going on in this old property. It was on the border of New Hampshire and Vermont, and it was pretty intense. Fortunately, I was with a group of Celtic shamans, so we were able to work with it. But it was interesting. Yeah, it was absolutely interesting. But that aside, there are a lot of people, a lot of ancestors that they're still available, they're still around, but they've crossed in a healthy way. So there's also, this one's a new one to me, is vocational ancestors. So the people that are the pioneers of the things we do for a living, especially if it's something that's of passion for you. The people who taught them and taught them before them, then taught you. And the people you're teaching and thinking about how that's getting passed on. I'm a psychologist, so I think back like, wow, Freud and Jung are my ancestors. That's kind of cool. Like, I kind of dig that. But that would be true of any profession. Hairdressing, accounting, certainly anything religious for sure. So, and I have a hairdresser here. I just realized that. Hi, Paul. So, yeah, so there's all of that piece. So there's another which is actually one of my favorites, is the spiritual ancestor. So there might not be any link any other way. It's just a presence that you feel. It's just an energy that's there. I had the pleasure of being interviewed on a platform called Talking Tutors a couple weeks ago. And Jen, you got to know about this one. And she had told me before we went live that she was looking at her own ancestry. And then she ended up sharing that in the interview as we were talking about ancestors. And she said, she's in Australia. And she said, I don't really have anybody spectacular. But, here she is with this enormous platform. And she's a very big Anne Boleyn person. She writes a lot about Anne Boleyn. She's always getting in the Anne Boleyn historians, really bringing a lot of light to Anne Boleyn and how history is being kinder and kinder to her as time goes on. And she says, I don't know why I'm so drawn to Anne Boleyn. I said, I think she's your spiritual ancestor. And she just lit up. So it was like my favorite moment in the whole interview. So yeah, so we often have those kinds of ancestors as well. So for what we're going to do, and I realize we're just coming after the clock's changing, and it's already been dark out for a while. So I realize some of you might be a little sleepy. So what I'll say to you is I'll encourage you to close your eyes, but you don't necessarily have to, and you can open up your eyes a little bit as we go through this journey. It's okay. And open your eyes just a little, let a little light in. It'll wake you up enough, and then you can come right back into the journey that we're on. So for folks at home, I just encourage you to get comfortable, but maybe not super comfortable. I wouldn't necessarily lay down, unless you already are. I would just make sure that you're relaxed and that you definitely feel held by wherever you're seated, and same thing for everybody here across the room. If you want, you can take your shoes off so you can sense the ground, the floor a little bit more, ultimately the earth a little bit more under your feet. You're certainly welcome to do that. And this is an invitation. So if you just want to listen or if you just want to chill, then that's cool too. But hopefully you're going to want to go on this journey. So we're just going to come into just centering ourselves. So sometimes it can help to put your hands on your own body. So just coming into greeting the breath, noticing what it feels like to breathe in this moment. Noticing how your lungs fill up with air and then let all the breath go. Noticing how the sensations of the breath change as you move through a breath cycle. And because we're paying attention to it, we can go a little bit more inward and start to notice things like, as we breathe in, being aware of our back ribs. They push out a little bit as we breathe in, and then they drop as we breathe out. The same thing happens with our front ribs, all around our chest. And as we breathe, you might notice the little activation of some of the muscles along the back, along the sides of the body. Maybe you're even noticing a little bit of the rise and fall of the shoulders. Might be very subtle, but it's available to you to notice, bringing you into this moment. And as we continue to breathe in our own natural way, you might start to notice the rise and fall of the belly. Noticing the nourishment of the breath coming in and then releasing anything we don't need anymore on the out-breath. So just for a moment, just noticing the rhythm of your own breath. So maybe there's some sound to that, especially if you're at home, that might be a little bit easier to do. Maybe it's just the felt sense. Breathing in, breathing out. So as you continue to breathe, imagine yourself on a dirt path by a slow flowing river. The warmth of the sun is on your face as you start treading down the path. The air around you is crisp with hints of pine. The trees have few leaves left on their branches, and those that are left are vibrant reds and golds. You walk for a few minutes, enjoying your surroundings, and then in the distance you see a light. You start walking towards it, knowing that there is something wonderful for you waiting there. As you get closer to the light, you see the outline of a small cottage. There is smoke drifting from its chimney, giving hope for warmth inside. You quicken your pace until you come to a small gate in front of the cottage. The gate opens easily to the front walk leading to a wooden porch. On the porch are bright yellow and purple mums and an array of pumpkins of all different sizes, placed near the corn stalks affixed to the porch pillars. Moving to the front door, you find it unlocked, so you open it and cross over the threshold. Once you are inside, a comfortable warmth embraces you like a hug, chasing away the chill from outside. You notice a hot beverage of your choice has been left for you to enjoy. You take the beverage and go sit in a comfortable chair next to the soothing fire that's been lit in the fireplace. Here, you notice a sense of peace and calm. Deep peace and calm. This is your home, away from home. And there's only room for love and joy here. As you continue to breathe, taking in the wonderful scent of the fire, you settle yourself further into the chair. And then you see a sparkle of light in the doorway. It's like water glinting in the sunshine on the surface of a lake. You feel anticipation, waiting to see who will come over the threshold. A figure steps through and you sense that they are one of your ancestors, whether known to you on the physical plane or someone from your lineage. You stand as they walk towards you and embrace you in greeting. Both you and your ancestor settle yourselves before the fire. At first, you sit in a comfortable silence, soaking in the warmth of the fire together. You look at your ancestor and notice similarities within yourself and them. Maybe you have the same eyes or a similar way that you hold yourself. Then your ancestor turns towards you and smiles, gesturing for you to initiate the conversation. You ask, "What do I most need to know now? What do I most need to know as I move into the end of this year and into 2025? So in your sitting with your ancestor, go ahead and ask them that question. I'm going to leave a little moment of silence for you to have that conversation. After you've received their wisdom, their guidance, they offer you a gift, something to take back with you to remind you of what they shared with you, what they imparted to you. So in your journey, you can allow yourself to put out your hand toward your ancestor and let them place that gift into your hands. Allow yourself to take that gift in. Notice its qualities. Notice what it feels like. Taking a moment to just spend a little more time with this ancestor. You thank them deeply for the time they've spent with you and for their willingness to share their wisdom. They stand and gesture for you to do the same. And they wrap you in a big, comforting embrace and bid you farewell. They assure you that you may return to this place to communicate with them anytime you want to. And they take their leave back over the threshold of the cottage, out into the outside, out into the other world. You sit for a few more moments, soaking up the joy and peace you have experienced here with your ancestor. Once you are ready, you get up and walk through that doorway too. So coming back into noticing your breath, you start to feel yourself moving back through space and time. As you come back into your body, you can hear and feel the steady rhythm of your breath. You are still deep within yourself, but slowly you're coming back up, coming back into the room. With every breath, you feel yourself ascending, breathing in, moving up, and then breathing out, continuing to come up. And as you breathe, you feel your body as you sit. You feel your limbs, your head, your back against the chair. You can wiggle your fingers and toes. Taking your time. Maybe rocking your body back and forth a little bit, whatever movement your body's asking for. When you do feel ready, again, taking your time, you can eventually open your eyes. Just take a few moments to just reflect on this journey we just took. Reflect on what it felt like to be with your ancestor. what it felt like to be hugged by your ancestor, and certainly anything they imparted to you. And definitely the gift. And certainly feel free to write anything down. I saw a lot of smiles. So I think that's good news that some folks went places. So I'm wondering if anybody wants to share anything about the experience that came up for them online and in person. Anything at all. And it's okay to say that you had a completely different experience too. It's an interesting time. Like I said, the other world is right here, so you might have had a completely different experience, so all is welcome. Anne.
I was surprised by how vivid everything was.
Yeah.
Where I was. How vivid, how I could feel my feet on the earth.
Wow.
And in the room, and a cottage. Boom! It was all there. It was all there. The fire, the chair. She was here, and it was so vivid and so lovely. And an ancestor showed up who I remember as a child, and it struck me that she was, I'm almost her age. She was when she died.
Wow.
She died at 72. 72. So, and our connection was, she died when I was 8 or so, something like that.
Yeah.
So I remember her, but the hug was somehow reminiscent, like, oh,
That's
Merle,
lovely.
I do remember.
Yeah.
I had forgotten, so thank you.
Do you want to speak her name?
Catherine.
Nice. Catherine. Wonderful.
Thank you.
I can feel her. I can feel her. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Would anybody else like to share? Cheryl.
Like Anne said, your descriptions are just so wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
I could feel myself walking through the woods. I could smell the pine and see the cottage, and I was in the cottage, and feeling the fire. It was just lovely. And my ancestor, I kept thinking who's going to come up, and who came up is the oldest relative I can remember.
Wow.
My great-grandma Zelda.
Zelda.
Zelda is the one who came from Russia, Poland. And I'm wearing her chai, which is always special.
Oh, wonderful.
She didn't speak English or Finnish. So I could feel her. She was there, and I asked her, what advice she'd give me, but she just smiled. I didn't, and I was thinking I wanted something, but I didn't get anything.
That happens sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, well, that's okay. I can visit that cottage again. And
Yes, you can.
I
Yeah.
could feel a hug, and she always pinched her cheeks. She was so small, and it was nice to feel that from her. And inviting me to explore more with her.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I think when we speak their names and we experience them, I think we all get a sense of that. Yeah. Yeah. One thing about the ancestors, in several traditions I work with, it's they are waiting for us to invite them back into our lives. They are so waiting for that. They just want to help. And they just want to be there. They want to be guides. And that's your traditions too, right? Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. I want to check in with online. Anybody want to share? I'm going to call out Donna. Oh, Jen, go ahead.
No. Okay. Probably my affinity also for the Tudor period. When I walk into the cottage, it's more of a, rustic, you know, you know, past centuries ago, um, kind of feeling to me. And
Mm,
um, who came through the door for me was just a um, probably a person in their 20s, but long flowing red hair. And again, maybe my affinity for Elizabeth, I don't know, but she sat and she actually didn't speak at all to me, but she handed me a very elaborate key, like a very, imagine like a key from centuries ago, or one of those really big keys that would open one of those huge wood doors in a castle, and just gave that to me and held her, and then just gave me a hug and left. So I'm sure
how
I'll
did
sit
it
with that a
feel?
while and see what that means to me. But yeah,
How did it feel?
comforting, but also feeling like I have this journey ahead, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what the key's for.
I think so. I don't know.
We'll see, right? You'll
Yeah,
see.
but no
Yeah.
words, and I didn't know her name, but I felt at ease with her.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It's how you know she's yours. That's
I just
wonderful.
yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Love it. And I'm still going to call out Donna.
People know that I'm your sister.
Now they do.
So, and there's a few other relatives on the call or in the room.
And in the room,
So
yeah.
they'll know who I'm referring to, but it was Lida, and who I always have an affinity to. Her picture is actually about 3 feet away from me. That was a gift from you. And I realized that we have the same hair, and she had a warning for me.
Oh,
And yeah, this is not a family warning. This is a very personal warning to me regarding something that I do. And she also had a very positive message. And but it was done in a the way she said it to me was very matter of fact, but it was a very powerful message, which I would expect nothing less from her. And she did give me it was a feather, and it was a very unique colored feather. And it's not the feather; it's what the feather symbolized. Has to do with the message. And so that's what came to me. And that's not the first time that I have interacted with her or Charles, but it was just her this time. And so I really appreciate this because it brings me back to that practice. When I was studying for the CFP exam, I called on them quite a bit, and I found that to be very helpful and soothing. And maybe I need to get back to that practice a little bit. So.
I remember you were calling on them. So yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they usually hang out by my pool, but now they're hanging out in a cottage, so that's it's different. And but it's that connection again, and it was just like a no-brainer. When she came through the door, I was like, oh, it's Lida. Of course it's Lida. Who else is it gonna be? So and yeah, so it made me remember too that I believe that she died 30 years before I was born. So I think the dates are pretty close. And yeah, just makes me want to go back to South Carolina.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else online want to share?
Sure, I'll share.
Yeah,
So it
Grace.
was interesting because I really wanted my mother to come through, but it was my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, Ethel Candy Norton, who came through. And the first thing that I noticed was the smell. It was,
Oh,
there was a
wow.
very distinct smell that I had when I would walk into my grandmother's home. We would visit her every summer. And that's what I was first aware of. So which was really fascinating because I tend to be a little more clairvoyant or whatever, but that was really interesting to have that sense of smell. Um, and she and maybe it was the Irish connection. So she didn't travel much, but she took one trip and it was to Ireland. And she had a beautiful, she came back with a beautiful cup and saucer, with shamrocks to add to her. She collected teacups, and she gave me that. In the meditation, I actually don't have that particular teacup from her, but her message and her desire for me is to slow down, to maybe get, especially now that the weather's, well, not this week, but maybe beyond that, it'll starting to get cooler, to enjoy a cup of tea in the afternoon and just kind of take that time to sit, look out the window. Um, and I don't have that particular cup of tea and saucer, but I do have her whole set of china that she got at a tag sale. But it's this beautiful Limoges set of china, which includes teacups and saucers. So I'll be making some cuppas and remembering Grandma.
Oh, it's so lovely. Thank you, Grace. And that message of slow down, that's good for everybody. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark's raising his
Yeah,
hand.
Oh, all
I'll
right,
go.
Mark.
Yeah.
Hi.
Now I'm on the wave of all the online folks who are talking, right? So it's interesting because I had an encounter in my sort of guided journey with an ancestor I have never really thought much about in my life at all. And someone I've known about, but no interaction ever in my thoughts. And it was my great grandmother, my mom's dad's mother. And I was named after my mother's father. And so this is his mom, Augusta Brecher, her name was. She was like a 6 foot tall, big Austrian woman. It's the only thing I ever knew about her. And in this sort of, and again, I can't parse out where all this came from, but there's been this sort of uncovering of a separate life that my grandfather had. And he had another family and all of this stuff. And now this is
Oh,
his mother, who the message I got, and I didn't hear anything audible, but the message I got was that the family should forgive him and be at peace, that he meant no harm. He meant no harm. And I had always heard my grandfather, who again I'm named after, was this gentle, kind soul. And you realize like a couple of things can be true at the same time, right? You can be
yeah.
those things, and then you can be other things. And so a message from his mother, again, a woman I've never processed much about in my life, was what came through to me in this, which is really fascinating. I think I want to go talk to my mom about it a little bit.
Oh, wow. Mark, that's amazing. That's amazing. There's a lot of people going, wow, in the room. I don't know if you can hear that. Oh, man. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody on this side of the room want to share? Michelle.
So mine was really interesting. Again, I want to share with everybody else. I do this work, but I'm not wholly visual all the time.
Mhm.
And I dropped right into the path and the river and the cottage and all of the detail. It was so easy to follow your voice and just be in that space. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're so welcome.
And I had two visitors. So my grandfather and another guy who's called the White Wizard.
The White Wizard?
So when my grandfather was alive, he had many, many adventures and many near-death experiences. And he would always see a white wizard that would save him. Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Wow.
So one time he was like in the ocean, and my grandfather didn't swim, but he got swept into the ocean. And when he looked back at the sand, there was a white wizard with his hand out. He literally just pulled it back out.
You know your magic, right? You come from magical beings.
So when my grandfather passed away, which was over 20 years ago, the white wizard used to come and support me. So it was kind of.
You've seen the white wizard?
Yes, I've seen.
Oh my God.
So it's really cool. So in the cottage, my grandfather and the white wizard sat together to be with me, and I've never seen them together. I've only ever seen them separate. So they've never come together like that. So that was really magical. And then, the message. And I'm one of those people that goes straight into my head going, ooh, I'm going to create the message. What do I want to create the message to be? And I went, okay, and let go of that. And the message from my grandfather, who was the most loving, also from Russia, my grandfather, well, actually Bukhara. And his message was, I'll be your driving force, because I'm in a real pivotal change in my life right now. And he said, I'll be your driving force.
Wow.
And then the white wizard turned around and went, and I'll pick up all the pieces. Thanks. Oh my God, thank you. So it was just the coolest thing, and the gift was a feather. Someone else said they had a feather.
Yeah, somebody else had a feather as well. Yeah.
But the gift was a feather also.
Yeah.
So it was beautiful. I'm like so pumped up and excited, and thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And amazing where this can go. I mean, looks like a helping spirit joined in as well with the answers with the white wizard. Yeah. Pretty amazing. Yeah.
So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for sharing it. Other folks, anybody else want to share anywhere online? Yeah, go ahead.
Mine was kind of different. Has anybody here read The Witch of Blackbird Pond? So in my meditation, I was walking into that cottage, and the Witch of Blackbird Pond was a Quaker, and I was Kit, and I was dressed in pink silk, walking down in this Puritan landscape, and I went down and I sat next to the Quaker woman, and she was just very comforting, sitting by the fire to me, and she gave me an amber heart, and said, "Know your belovedness, just as you are." And I looked at the heart and I flipped it over, and when I flipped it over, it turned to gold. And then I flipped it over, and I just put it up and tucked it into my heart. So a little different. I'm glad you said that about the ancestors can be different, because that's not what I haven't read that book in more than 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
How
I don't
present
know
it
where
was.
that came from.
What an amazing message. You are beloved. That is powerful. Yeah. And it's good for everybody to hear that, because that's the ancestors. That's what they're always trying to tell us.
My favorite hymn was Just As I Am.
Just as I am.
Which is what mirrored in my head when I heard it.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, yeah. Or anybody else want to share? It's been lovely hearing this come out. And I know sometimes they're very private and they're tender, so I get it. Jen.
I'll just note something that you said that I'd never thought of before, which was that ancestors can be geographical. I'd never heard that term before, and boy, what a gift that is for me, because I know that I have those, but I've never had a name to put to it before.
Oh, okay.
And the person that I met with, I'm actually writing a spiritual memoir right now, and it's based in Cape Cod, which is a place that's special to me. And this person is an actual person who lived and was buried there. I don't know her. I know her name. Her name is Experience. I've seen her gravestone. And I've been in communication with this person for some time now, and she was the one that popped up in the cottage, which was great, because I'm trying to write about her and think about her voice and figure out how she's going to go into the story that I'm trying to tell. And so her message to me was loud and clear. It said, "Be bold, speak out, and stand up." And okay, in what context are we talking? And my gift was a megaphone. Which I find so interesting because I've been very focused on a career as a spiritual director, which is all about listening, right? But suddenly at the turn of this year, it's about stand up and say it. So I'm definitely taking that one home with me.
That's gorgeous. Yeah, that is a gorgeous image. Yeah.
And I feel more connected to this lady who died in 1830 than I had felt in the past. So thank you.
And I can't wait to read your memoir.
It's very early. You're gonna wait a
Oh,
while.
I understand.
Okay.
Oh, I understand that. But you've got me. You've got me now. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else online? Anybody else in the room? Thank you for sharing. So I'll just open it up to any questions at all, anything at all, whether it's about ancestors, being with ancestors, connecting with ancestors, anything about the history, anything at all. Any other questions? Oh. Go ahead.
The father person.
Hello.
Oh, you have three lines of ancestors. You have the one that's followed through my mother. It's the English, Scottish, Irish. Now, I've never played it up much because my uncle, Bud, who you met once before he died, played down the Irish side of the family.
He did.
He did heavily. You have the Polish side, and your mother was from Poland, an immigrant, not immigrant parents, she was an immigrant. And then you have on my father's side, your grandfather, people coming from Russia through England, and then their name changes in Ellis Island. So it's very hard to trace them because the name of Crone, which was your maiden name, it doesn't go back past Ellis Island. It's arbitrary. It's an arbitrary name just given to them. So I'm wondering, and I never really I pursued the Russian side, but I never pursued the English, Irish, Scottish side. What motivated you to go down that route?
I already felt such an affinity to English, Irish, and Scottish. I just felt such an affinity to it, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And as I was writing, I just had to know. I had to know what was going on back then. And I just kept going back and back and back, and then this whole thing, I mean, it's been life-changing. Because the message I get from Sorley Boy in particular is remember where you come from. And I have to tell you, that is such a grounding thing to remember. When I get nervous, when I get scared about stuff, remember where you come from. And also there's a lot of courage that he's given me, because he was very courageous. I wouldn't be here if he hadn't come into my life. As weird as that might sound, although probably not to this group. But yeah, and now it's just like, it's just so amazing. I mean, you guys had gotten the family tree done back into, I think, the early or at some point in 1710, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so to find out past that, I mean, because that's where I had to go. I had to go, and even go back farther. And I got back to like the 1100s. So, and got to do ancestral land in Scotland there. So that, yeah, it's just been amazing. Highly, highly recommended to anybody who's thinking about it. You start with ancestry.com, go nuts. It's beautiful, it's beautiful. And for you, it might be just somebody who's 2 generations away. Donna's referring to Lida. Lida is our great-great-grandmother. But I had to go 15 generations and further, so. So. Does that help? Does that help answer that question?
I want to remind you that Benedict Arnold's in our family too, so be careful.
But I know, but I never found him, to be honest with you. So I don't know. I don't know where he is.
Middle name is named after them.
Yeah, yours is, yeah. And then we didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Or me. Thanks, Debbie.
So, not you, him. Anybody? Any other questions? Yes.
My sister and I, growing up, we always learned that we're very English, Irish, Dutch. And Leanne, at around 18, went to live in Brazil. Felt a deep affinity with Brazilians. I went to live in Brazil around the same age when I graduated from high school, and felt a deep affinity for Brazilians and Latino cultures in general. And like, in some ways, they feel more like our people than our people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a curiosity. It's always been a curiosity for us, and just in terms of ancestry.
Why that might be happening?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you done your blood analysis or your spit analysis?
Yeah.
Is there anything Brazilian there?
No, British Isles.
British Isles, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of stuff where people just happen to go to Brazil. They don't necessarily become Brazilian, but there might be a family chapter where somebody spent time there, and it's in you. It's passed on epigenetically. There's some kind of memory that gets passed on, and then some kind of affinity. The other thing, it could be something else altogether. It could be a spiritual calling, but the fact that you both have it, are you guys very connected? Okay, so that, yeah, I would explore that. I would absolutely explore that and see.
Like, I came home and I pretty much taught my family how to hug and just be present for one another.
Wow.
And kiss and hug and stuff. But
Like they do in Brazil.
When I was 7, I was too old to be carried or hugged. Like, that was.
Oh, wow. It sounds so healing. It sounds like this Brazilian piece is very, very healing.
It's been amazing.
Yeah. This is a total side thing, and I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but there's a lot of shamanism in South America. Also very ancestral. And there's South American shamans. There's some actually pretty famous ones that are pretty easy to access if you,
Really?
yeah.
Those
If,
were both healers, so that would be
oh, okay. Michelle, you say his name better than I do. Alberto?
Alberto Ronaldo.
Yeah. He's,
Alberto belongs to the Four Winds Society in Chile.
yeah, it might be worth connecting into that a little bit and finding out more, because it sounds big. It sounds big and healing and wonderful.
Four Winds Society?
Yeah. Awesome.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, Dave, have you thought about doing a retreat on ancestors?
Oh, yes, thank you, Larry. I think I have to. In the spring, we had done Body as Ally here. Some of you were at that retreat. Actually happened in this room on October 1st, kind of working with trauma-informed work. But Larry and I have been talking, and we're going to be offering a day apart. It's called a day apart retreat. So it's just the 9:30 to 3:30. Lunch is included at this fabulous place known as Rolling Ridge. For those of you, I'm sure everybody here is hopefully, I know Barbara, this is your first time, right? Yeah, it's a beautiful. If you can come here with the light, you'll be blown away with how beautiful the labyrinths and the lake and all the walking places, as well as the inside of all the different spaces. Very, very healing. But we will have a day where we will be exploring and working with our ancestors coming up in the spring. So more to be determined, and I will certainly share that information. But again, I think it's part of that spiritual hunger that we have. And again, most cultures connect to their ancestors all the time, but we don't. But we're starting to, and it's good that we do. It's good that we do, yeah. So thank you.
I'm going to throw the prompt in there.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So I want to thank everybody online who's been here tonight. I hope you enjoyed the journey. I hope you, I appreciate your support, more than you'll ever know. My heart just freaking opened huge as I saw you guys pop on the screen, especially a couple of you I haven't seen in a while. And it's just lovely, lovely, lovely to see you. And everybody here, I know some of you I don't know, so I'm so happy to see you too. And those that I do, grateful that you're here. So we'll probably conclude the online part. I'll probably be texting a lot of you later, maybe tomorrow. Yes. And I literally am feeling longing to see you guys. And we will, if anybody wants to buy a book, all proceeds are going to Rolling Ridge. Rolling Ridge is a nonprofit. So any other programs here. So we can start that. And I'm happy to sign a book if you want. If you'd like your book signed, happy to do that. And I won't take it offense if you don't want it signed. I get that. I get that too. Thanks, guys.
We love you.
Love you too.
Thank you.